as a man thinks. Effects of thought on circumstances. A man's mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild, but whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weak seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce them kind. Just as a gardener cultivates his plot, keeping it free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits which he requires, so may a man tend the garden of his mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. By pursuing this process, a man sooner or later discovers that he is the master gardener of his soul, the director of his life. He also reveals within himself the laws of thought and understands with ever increasing accuracy how the thought forces and mind elements operate in the shaping of his character, circumstances, and destiny. Thought and character are one, and as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the other condition of the person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean the man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with his vital thought element within himself that for the time being they are indispensable to his development. Every man is where he is by the law of his being. The thought which he has built into his character have taught him there, and the agreement of his life. There is no element of chance, but all is the result of the law which cannot end. This is just as true of those who feel out of harmony with the surrounding as of those who are contented with them. As a progressive and evolving being, man is where he is, that he may learn, that he may grow, and as he learns the spiritual lesson which any circumstance contends for him, it passes away and gives place to other circumstances. Man is perfected by circumstances so long as he believes in himself to be the creature of outside conditions, but when he realizes he is a creative power, that he may command the hidden soil and the seeds of his being out of which the circumstances grow, he then becomes the rightful master of himself. That circumstances grow out of thought every man knows, who has for any length of time practiced self-control and self-purification, for he will have noticed that the alteration in his circumstances has been to the exact ratio with his altered mental condition. So true is this that when a man earnestly applies himself to remedy the defects in his character and make swift and remarked progress, he passes rapidly through a succession of vicissitudes. Our soul attracts that which it sincerely harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. It reaches the height of its cherished aspirations. It falls to the level of his unchastened desires, and circumstances are the means by which the soul receives its own. Every thought, seed sown or allowed to fall into the mind or take its root there, produces its own, blossoming sooner or later into act, bearing its own fruitage of opportunity and circumstances. Good thoughts bear good fruit, and bad fruit. The outer world of circumstances shapes itself to be the inner world of thought, and both pleasant and unpleasant external conditions are factors which make for the ultimate good of the individual. As the reaper of his own harvest, man learns both by suffering and bliss, following the inmost desires, aspirations, thoughts by which he allows himself to be dominated, pursuing the will of the wish of impure imagining, or steadfastly walking the highway of strong and high endeavor. A man at last arrives at their fruition and fulfillment in the outer condition in its life. The law of growth and adjustment everywhere obtained. A man does not come to the almshouse or the jail by the tyranny of fate or circumstance, but by the pathway of groveling thoughts and base desires. Neither does a pure-minded man fall suddenly into crime or by stress of any external force. The criminal thought has long been secretly fostered in his heart, and the hour of opportunity revealed his gathered power. Circumstances does not make the man, it reveals him to himself. No such condition can exist as descending into vice and its attendant suffering apart from vicious inclinations, or ascending its virtue and its pure happiness without the continued cultivation of virtuous aspirations, and man, and therefore as the lord and master of thought, is the maker of himself, the shaper and author of environment. Even at birth, the soul comes of its own, and through every step of its earthly pilgrimage, it attracts those combinations of conditions which reveal itself, which are the reflections of its own purity and impurity, its strength and weakness. Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are. Their whims, fancies, and ambitions are thwarted at every step, but their most inmost thoughts and desires are fed with their own food, be it foul or clean. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves. It is in our very self. Man is manacled only by himself. Thought and actions are the jailers of fate. They imprison. Being bears, they are also the angels of freedom. They liberate. They are being noble. Not what he wishes and prays for does he get, but what he justly earns. His wishes and prayers are only gratified and answered when they harmonize with the thoughts and actions. In the light of this truth, then, what is the meaning of fighting against circumstances? It means that a man is continually revolting against an effect without which all the time he is nourishing and preserving its cause in his heart. That cause may take the form of conscious vice or an unconscious weakness. But whatever it is, it stubbornly retards the efforts of its possessor and thus call aloud for remedy. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. The man who does not shrink from self-crucifixion can never fail to accomplish the object upon which his heart is set. This is as true of earthly as of heavenly things. Even the man whose sole object is to acquire wealth must be prepared to make great personal sacrifices before he can accomplish his object, and how much more so he who would realize a strong and well-poised life. Here is a man who's wretchedly poor. He's extremely anxious that his surrounding and home comfort should be improved, yet all the time he shocks his work and considers he is justified in trying to deceive his employer on the ground of the insufficiency in his wages. Such a man does not understand the simplest rudiments of those principles which are the basis of the true prosperity, and is not only totally unfitted to rise out of his wretchedness, but is actually attracting to himself a still deeper wretchedness by dwelling in acting out indolent, deceptive, and unmanly thoughts. Here is a rich man who is a victim of painful and persistent disease as a result of gluttony. He is willing to give large sums of money to get rid of it, but he will not sacrifice his gluttonous desires. He wants to gratify his taste for rich and unnatural viands and have his health as well. Such a man is totally unfit to have health because he has not yet learned the first principles of a healthy life. Here is an employer of labor who drops crooked measures to avoid paying the regulation fee, and in the hope of making larger profits reduces the wages of his work people. Such a man is altogether unfitted for prosperity, and when he finds himself bankrupt, both as regards to reputation and riches, he blames circumstances, not knowing that he is the sole author of his condition. I have introduced these three cases merely as illustration of the truth that man is the causer, though nearly always unconsciously, of his circumstances, and that whilst aiming at the good end, he is continually frustrating its accomplishment by encouraging thoughts and desires which cannot be possibly harmonized with that aim. Such cases could be multiplied and varied almost indefinitely, but this is not necessary, as the reader can, if he so resolves, trace the action of the laws of the thought of his own mind and life, and until this is done, mere external facts cannot serve on a ground of reasoning. Circumstances, however, are so complicated, thought is so deeply rooted, and the conditions of happiness vary so vastly with individuals that a man's entire soul condition, although it may be known to himself, cannot be judged by another from the external aspects of his life alone. A man may be honest in certain directions, yet suffer privations. A man may be dishonest in certain directions, yet acquire wealth, but the conclusion usually formed that the one man fails because of his particular honesty, and that the other prospers because of his particular dishonesty, is the result of a superficial judgment which assumes that the dishonest man is almost totally corrupt and the honest man almost entirely virtuous. In the light of the deeper knowledge and wider experience, such judgment is found to be erroneous. The dishonest man may have some admirable virtues which the other does not possess, and the honest man obnoxious vices which is absent in the other. The honest man reaps the good results of the honest thoughts and acts. He also brings upon himself the sufferings which his vice produce. The dishonest man likewise garners his own suffering and happiness. It is pleasing to human vanity to believe that one suffers because of one's virtues, but not until a man has extirpated every sickly, bitter, and impure thought from his mind and washed every sinful stain from his soul can he be in a position to know and declare that his suffering are the result of his good and not of his bad qualities, and on the way to yet long before he has reached the supreme perfection, he will have found working in his mind and life the great law which is absolutely just and which cannot therefore give good for evil, evil for good. Possessed by such knowledge, he will then know, looking back upon his past ignorance and blindness, that his life is and always was justly ordered, and that all his past experience, good and bad, were his equitable outworking of his evolving yet unevolved self. Good thoughts and actions can never be produce bad results. Bad thoughts and actions can never produce good results. This is our but saying that nothing can come from bad corn but corn, nothing can from nettles but nettles. Men understand this law in his natural world and work with it, but we understand it in the mental and moral world. Though his operation there is just and the simple and undeviating, and they therefore do not cooperate with it. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in the same direction. It is an indication that individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and supreme use of suffering is to purity, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross has been removed, and perfectly pure and enlightened being could not suffer. The circumstances which a man encounters with suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony. The circumstances which a man encounters with blessedness are the result of his own mental harmony. Blessedness, not material possessions, is the measure of the right thought. Wretchedness, not the lack of material possessions, is the measure of wrong thought. A man may be cursed and rich, he may be blessed and poor. Blessedness and riches are only joined together when the rich are rightly and wisely used, and the poor man only descends into wretchedness when he regards his not as a burden unjustly imposed. Indigence and indulgence are the two extremes of wretchedness. They are both equally unnatural, and as a result of mental disorder, a man is not rightly conditioned until he is a happy, healthy, and prosperous being. Happiness and health and prosperity are the result of harmonious adjustment to the inner with the outer of the man with his surroundings. A man could begins to be a man when he ceases to whine and revile and commences to search for the hidden justice that regulates his life. And as he adopts in his mind to be regulating factor, he ceases to accuse others as the cause of his condition and builds himself up in his strong and noble thoughts, ceases to kick against circumstances, but begins to use them as to be more rapid progress and as a means of discovering the hidden power and possibilities within himself. The laws, not confusion, is the dominating principle in the universe. Justice, not injustice, is the soul and substance of life. The righteousness, not corruption, is the molding and moving force in the spiritual government of the world. This being so, man has but to right himself to find that the universe is right, and during the process of putting himself right, he will find that as he alters his thoughts towards things and other people will alter towards him. The proof of this truth is in every person, and it therefore admits of easy investigation by systematic introspection and self-analysis. Let a man radically alter his thoughts, and he will astonish at the rapid transformation in his effect in the material conditions of his life. Men imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstances. Bestial thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, will solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into unawaiting and confusing habits, will solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallize into weak, unmanly, and irresolute habits, which solidify into circumstances of failure, indigence, and slavish dependence. Lazy thoughts crystallize into habits of uncleanness, dishonesty, was solidified into circumstances of foulness and beggary. Hateful and contemptuous thoughts crystallized into habits of accusation and violence, was solidified into circumstances of injury and persecution. Selfish thoughts of all kinds crystallized into habits of self-seeking, was solidified into circumstances more or less distressing. On the other hand, beautiful thoughts of all kinds crystallize into habits of grace and kindness, which solidify into genial and sunny circumstances. Pure thoughts crystallizes into the habits of temperance and self-control, which solidify into circumstances of repose and peace. Thought of courage, self-reliance, and decision crystallize into manly habits, which solidify into circumstances of success, plenty of freedom. Energetic thoughts crystallize into habits of cleanliness and industry, which solidify into circumstances of pleasantness. Gentle and forgiving thought crystallize into habits of gentleness, which solidify into protective and preservative circumstances. Loving and unselfish thoughts crystallize into habits of self-forgetfulness for others, which solidify into circumstances of pure and abiding prosperity and true riches. A particular train of thought persisted in, be it good or bad, cannot fail to produce the results of the character and circumstances. A man cannot directly choose his circumstances, but he can choose his thoughts, and so indirectly yet surely shape his circumstances. Nature helps every man to the gratification of thought which is not most encourages, and opportunities are presented which will most speedily bring to the surface both the good and the evil thoughts. Let a man cease from his sinful thoughts, and all the world will soften towards him and be ready to help him. Let him put away his weakly and sickly thoughts, and lo, opportunities will spring upon every hand to aid his strong resolves. Let him encourage good thoughts, and no hard fate shall blind him down to wretchedness and shame. The world is your kaleidoscope, and the varying combinations of colors which is every succeeding moment it presents to you are the exquisitely adjusted pictures of your ever-moving thoughts. You will be what you will to be. Let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but spreads concept and is free. It masters time, it conquers space, it calls that beautiful, boastful tricksters chance, and bids the tyrant circumstance and crown and fill the servant's place. The human will, the force insane, the offspring of deathless soul, can hew a way to any goal. The walls of granite intervene. Be not impatient in delay, but wait as one who understands. When spirit rises and commands, the gods are ready to obey. Wow. Effect of thought on body, health and body. The body is the servant of the mind. It obeys the operations of the mind, whether they be deliberately chosen or automatically expressed. At the bidding of unlawful thoughts, the body sinks rapidly into the disease and decay. At the command of glad and beautiful thoughts, it becomes clothed with youthfulness and beauty. Disease and health, like circumstances, are rooted in thought. Sickly thoughts will express themselves through sickly body. Thoughts of fear will have been known to kill a man as speedily as a bullet, and they are continually killing thousands of people just as surely as they less rapidly. The people who live in fear of disease and the people who get it. Anxiety quickly demoralizes the whole body and lays it open to the entrance of disease, while impure thoughts, even if not physically indulged, will sooner or later shatter the nervous system. Strong, pure and happy thoughts build up the body of the vigor and grace. The body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thought by which it is impressed, and habits of thought will produce their own effect, good or bad, upon it. Man will continue to have pure and poisoned blood as long as they propagate unclean thoughts. Out of a clean heart comes a clean life and a clean body. Out of the defiled mind proceeds the defiled life and the corrupt body. Thought is the fount of action. Life and circumstances make the fountain pure, and all will be pure. Change of diet will not help a man who will not change his thoughts. When a man makes his thoughts pure, he no longer desires impure food. Clean thoughts make clean habits. The so-called saint who does not wash his body is not a saint. He who has strengthened and purified his thoughts does not need to consider the malevolent microbe. If you would perfect your body, guard your mind. If you would renew your body, beautify your mind, thoughts of malice, envy, disappointment, despondency rob the body of its health and grace. A sore face does not come by chance. It is made by sore thoughts. Wrinkles that mar are drawn by folly, passion, and pride. I know a woman of 96 who has the bright innocent face of a girl. I know a man well under middle age whose face is drawn into an harmonious contest. The one is the result of the sweet and sunny disposition, the other is the outcome of passion and discontent. As you cannot have a sweet and wholesome abode unless you admit the air and the sunshine freely into the room, so is a strong body. And bright, happy, and serene countenance can only result from the free admittance into the point of thoughts of joy and the goodwill and serenity. On the faces of the ages, they are the wrinkles made by sympathy, others by strong and pure thought, and others by carved by passion, which cannot distinguish them. With those who have lived righteously, age is calm, peaceful, and softly mellowed like the setting sun. I have recently seen a philosopher on his deathbed. He was not only old except in years, he died as sweetly and peacefully as he had lived. There is no physician like a cheerful thought, and for dissipating the ills of the body, there is no comforter to compare the goodwill for dispersing the shadows of grief and sorrow. To live continuously in the thought of the ill will, cynicism, and suspicion and envy is to be confined in the self-made prison hole. But to think well of all, to be cheerful with all, to be patiently, to learn to find the good in all, such blessed thoughts are the very portals of heaven. Such unselfish thoughts are the very portals of heaven, and to dwell day by day in the thoughts of peace toward every creature will bring abounding peace in their thought and purpose. Until thought is linked with the purpose, there is no intelligent accomplishment. With the majority of the bark of thought is allowed to drift upon the ocean of life, aimlessness is the wise, and such drifting must not continue for him who would stay clear of catastrophe and destruction. They who have no central purpose in their life fall an easy prey to petty worries, fears, troubles, and self-pityings, all of which are indications of weakness, which lead just as surely as deliberately planned sins, though by a different route, to failure, unhappiness, and loss. For weakness cannot persist in the power-evolving universe. A man should conceive a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts. He may take the form of the spiritual ideal, or it may be a worldly object according to his nature at the time being, but whichever it is, he should strictly focus his thought force upon the subject which he has set before him. He should make this purpose his supreme duty and should devote himself to its attainment, not allowing his thoughts to wander away into ephemeral fancies, longing, and imaginings. This is the royal role to self-control and true concentration of thought. Even if he fails again and again to accomplish his purposes, he necessarily must until weakness is overcome. The strength of character gain will be the measure of his true success, and this will form a new starting point of the future power and triumph. Those who are not prepared for the apprehension of the great purpose should fix their thoughts upon the faultless performance of their duty, no matter how insignificant the task may appear. Only in this way can the thoughts be gathered in focused resolution and energy be developed, which being done, there is nothing which may not be accomplished. The weakest soul, knowing its own weakness and believing its truth, that the strength can only be developed by effort and practice, will Thus, believing at once, begin to exert itself and adding effort to effort, patience to patience, and strength to strength, will never cease to develop and will at last grow divinely strong. As the physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, as the man of the weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in the right thinking, to put away aimlessness and weakness, and to begin to think with purpose, is to enter the ranks of those strong ones who only recognize failure as one of the pathways to attainment, who make all conditions of them, and who think strongly, attempt fearlessly, and accomplish masterfully. Having conceived of this purpose, a man should mark out a straight pathway to his achievement. Looking neither to the right nor to the left, doubts and fears should be rigorously excluded, they are disintegrating elements which break up the straight line of effort, rendering it crooked, ineffectual, useless. Thoughts of doubt and fear never accomplish anything and never can. They always lead to failure. Purpose, energy, power to do, and all strong thoughts cease when doubt and fear creep in. The evil to do springs from the knowledge that we can do. Doubt and fear are the great enemies of knowledge, and he who encourages them, who does not slay them, thoughts himself at every step. He who has conquered doubt and fear has conquered failure. His every thought is allied with power in all difficulties and bravely made with wisely overcome. His purpose is a season planted. They bloom and bring forth fruit that does not fall permanently to the ground. Thought allied fearlessly to the purpose becomes creative force. He who knows this is ready to become something higher and stronger than the bundle of the wavering thoughts and the fascinating, fluctuating sensations He who does this has become the conscious and intelligent wielder of his mental powers, the thought acted in achievement. All that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thoughts. In a justly altered universe, where loss of occupies would mean total destruction, individual responsibility must be absolute. A man's weakness and strength, purity and impurity are his own and not another man's. They are brought about by himself and not by another, and they can only be altered by himself, never by another. His condition is also his own and not another man's. His suffering and his happiness are evolved in from within. As he thinks, so is he. As he continues to think, so he remains. A strong man cannot help a weaker unless the weaker is willing to be helped, and even when the weak man must become strong by himself, he must, by his own effects, develop the strength that he admires as another none but himself can alter his condition. It has been usual for man to think and say many men are slaves because one is an oppressor. Let us hate the oppressor. Now, however, there is amongst an increasing few a tendency to reverse the judgment and to say, one man is oppressor because many are slaves. Let us despise the slaves. The truth is that the oppressor and the slaves are no co-operators in ignorance, and while seeming to afflict each other, are in reality afflicting themselves. A perfect knowledge perceives the action of law of the weakness of the oppressed and the misapplied power of the oppressor. A perfect love, seeing the suffering which both states entail, condemns neither. A perfect compassion impresses both oppressor and oppressed. He who has conquered weakness and put away all selfish thoughts belongs neither to oppressor or oppressed. He is free. A man can only rise, conquer, and achieve the lifting up of his thoughts. He can only remain weak, object, and miserably by refusing to lift up his thoughts. Before a man can achieve anything, even in worldly things, he must lift his thoughts above selfish animal indulgence. He may not, in order to succeed, give up all animality and selfishness by the means, but the portion of it must at least be sacrificed. The man whose first thought is bestial and indulgence could neither think clearly nor plan methodically. He could not find and develop his latent resources and would fail in any undertaking, not having commenced manfully to control his thoughts. He is not in a position to control affairs and to adopt serious responsibilities. He is not fit to act independently and to stand alone, but he is limited only by the thoughts which he chooses. There can be no progress, no achievement without sacrifice. The man whose worldly success will be in the measure of his sacrifices to his subdues animal thoughts and fixes his mind on the development of his plan and the strengthening of his resolution and self-reliance, and the higher he lifts his thoughts, the more manly, upright, and righteous he becomes, the greater will be his success, the more blessed and enduring will be his achievement. The universe does not favor the greedy, the dishonest, the vicious, although on the mere surface it may seem to appear so. It helps the honest and the magnanimous, the virtuous. All the great teachers of the age have declared that this is the very form, and to prove and to know it is the man who has to persist in making himself more and more virtuous by lifting up his thoughts. Intellectual achievement are the result of the thought consecrated in the search for knowledge and or for the beautiful and the true in life and nature. Such achievements may be sometimes connected with vanity and ambition, but they are not the outcome of those circumstances, characteristics. They are the natural outgrowth of the long and arduous effort of pure and unselfish thoughts. Spiritual achievements are the conception of holy aspiration. He who lives constantly in the conception of noble and lofty thoughts, who dwells upon all that is pure and selfless, will, as surely as the sun reaches its zenith and the moon its full, becomes wise, noble in character, and rise into the position of influence and blessedness. Achievement of whatever kind is the crown of the effort of the diadem of thought. By the aid of the self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, well-directed thought, a man ascends to the aid of the animality. Indolence, impurity, corruption, and confusion of thought, a man descends. A man may rise to high success in the world and even to lofty altitudes in the spiritual realm, and again descend into the weakness and the wretchedness by allowing arrogant, selfish, and corrupt thoughts to take possession of him. Victories attained by the right thought can only be maintained only by watchfulness. Many give way when success is assured and rapidly fall back into failure. All achievements, whether in business, intellectual, or spiritual world, are the result of the definitely directed thought, are governed by the same law and are the same method. The only difference lies in the object of attainment. He who would accomplish little must sacrifice little. He who would achieve much must sacrifice much. And he who would attain highly must sacrifice greatly. Visions and ideals. Beautiful. The dreamers and the saviors of the world. The dreamers are the saviors of the world. As the visible world is sustained by the invisible, and so man, through all their trials and sins and sordid vocations, are nourished by the beautiful visions of the solitary dreamers. Humanity cannot forget its dreamers. It cannot let its ideals fade and die. It lives in them. It knows them as the realities which it shall one day see and know. Composer, sculptor, painter, poet, prophet, sage, these are the makers of the afterworld, the architects of the heaven. The world is beautiful because they have lived. Without them, laboring humanity would perish. He who cherishes a beautiful vision, a lofty ideal in his heart, who will one day realize that Columbus cherished a vision of another world, and he discovered it. Copernicus fostered the vision of the multiplicity of worlds and wider universe, and he revealed it. Buddha beheld the vision of the spiritual world of stainless beauty and perfect peace, and he entered into it. Cherish your vision, cherish your ideals, cherish the music that stirs in your heart, the beauty that forms in your mind, the loveliness that drapes your present thoughts, for out of them will grow the delightful conditions, all heavenly environment of these. If you but would remain true to them, your world will at last be well. To desire is to obtain, to aspire is to achieve. Shall man's bestest desires receive the fullest measure of the gratification, and the purest aspirations starve for the lack of sustenance? Such is not the law, such as the condition of things can never obtain, ask and receive. Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. Your ideal is a prophecy of what you shall one day at last agree. The greatest achievement was at first and for a time a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and the highest vision of the soul is waking angel stirs. Dreamers are the seedlings of realities. Your circumstances may be uncongenial, but they shall not long remain so. If you only perceive an ideal and strive to reach it, you cannot travel within and stand still without. Here is a youth, heart raised by poverty and labor. confined long hours in an unhealthy workshop, unschooled, lacking all the arts of refinement. But he dreams of better things. He thinks of intelligence, of refinement, of grace and beauty. He conceives of mentally built up an ideal condition of life, the vision of vital liberty, and the larger scope takes possession of him. Unrest urges him into action, and he utilizes all his spare time and means, small though they are, to the development of his latent powers and resources. Very soon, so altered up his mind becomes that the workshop can no longer hold him. It has become so out of harmony with his mentality that it falls out of his life. As the garment is cast aside and the growth of opportunity that with the scope of his expanding powers he presses out of it for ever. Years later, we see this youth as a full-grown man. We find him a master of certain forces of the mind which he wields with worldwide influence and almost unequal power. In his hand, he holds the cause of the gigantic responsibility. He speaks and lo, lives are changed when women hang upon his words and remold their characters and sunlight. It becomes fixed and luminous center around his innumerable destinies revolve. He has realized the vision of his youth and has become one with his ideal. And you too, youthful readers, will realize the vision, not the idle wish of your heart, be it base or beautiful or the mixture of both, for you will always gravitate toward that which you secretly most love. Into your hands will be placed the exact results of your own thoughts. You will receive that which you earn, no more, no less. Whatever your present environment may be, you will fall, remain, or rise with your thoughts, your vision, your ideal. You will become as small as the controlling desire, as great as your dominant aspiration. In the beautiful words of the sentence, Davis, you may be keeping accounts, and presently you should walk out of the door that for so long has seemed to you a barrier of your ideals, and this shall find yourself before an audience, and the pen still behind your ear, the ink stains on your fingers, and then there shall pour out the torrent of your aspiration, inspiration. You may be driving sheep, and you shall wander to the city, heroic, bucolic, and open-minded mouth shall wander under the intrepid guidance of the Spirit into the studio of the Master, and after a time he shall say, I have nothing more to teach you, and now you have become the Master. You did so recently dream of great things while driving sheep. You shall lay down the saw and plain to take upon yourself the regeneration of the world. The thoughtless, the ignorant, and the indolent, seeing only the apparent effects of the things and not the things themselves, talk of luck, of fortune, and chance. Seeing a man grow rich, they say, how lucky he is. Observing another become intellectual, they exclaim, how highly favored he is. And noting the saintly character and the wide influence of another, they may remark how chance aids him at every turn. They do not see the trials and the failures and the struggles which these men have encountered in order to gain this experience, have no knowledge of the sacrifices they have made and of the undoubted efforts they have put forth, of the faith they have exercised, that they might overcome the apparently insurmountable and realize the vision of their heart. They do not know the darkness in the heart takes. They only see the light and the joy and call it luck. Do not see the long and the arduous journey, but only behold the pleasant goal and call it good fortune. Do not understand the process, but only perceive the results and call it chance. In all human affairs, there are first and there are results, and the strength of the efforts is a measure of the results. Chance is not gifts. Powers, material, intellectual, or spiritual possessions are the fruits of effort. They are thoughts completed, objects accomplished, and visions realized. The vision that you glorify in your mind and the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this is your built-up life. By this you will become. The serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Serenity. Calmness of mind is one of the most beautiful jewels of wisdom. It is the result of long and patient effort in self-control. Its presence is an indication of ripened experience and of a more than ordinary knowledge of the laws and operation of thought. A man becomes calm in the measure of his understanding himself as a thought evolving being. For such knowledge necessitates the understanding of others as a result of thought. As he develops the right understanding and sees more and more clearly the internal relations of things by the action of the cause and effect, he ceases to fuss and fume and worry and grieve and remains poised, steadfast, and serene. The calm man, having learned how to govern himself, knows how to adapt himself to others. And they in turn reverence his spiritual strength and feel that they can learn of him and rely upon him. The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, and the power of good. Even the ordinary trader will find his business prosperity increase as he develops a greater self-control and equanimity, for people will always prefer to deal with a man whose demeanor is strongly equable. The strong, calm man is always loved and revered. He is like a shade-giving tree at the thirsty land and sheltering rock in a storm. Who does not love a tranquil heart, a sweet-tempered, balanced life? It does not matter whether it rains or shines or what changes come in those possessing these blessings, for they are always sweet, serene, and calm. They exquisite is poise of character, which we call serenity in the last lesson of culture. It is the flowering of life, the fruitage of the soul. It is precious as wisdom, more to be desired than gold, yeah, even fine gold. How insignificant mere money seeking looks in comparison with a serene life, a life that dwells in the ocean of truth, beneath the waves, beyond the reach of the tempest, in the eternal calm. How many people we know who sold their lives, who ruin all that is sweet and beautiful by explosive tempers, who destroys their poise of character and make bad blood. It is the question whether the great majority of the people do not ruin their lives and mar their happiness by lack of self-control. How few people we meet in life who are well-benders, who have that exquisite poise which is a characteristic of the finished character. Yes, humanity searches with uncontrolled passion, is stimulus with ungoverned grief, is blown about by anxiety and doubt. Only the wise man, only he who has thoughts are controlled and purified, makes the winds and the storms of the soul obey him. Tempest-tossed souls, wherever you may be, under whatever conditions you may live, know this: in the ocean of the life, the ice of blessedness are smiling, and the sunny shore of your ideal awaits your coming. Keep your hand firmly upon the hem of thought. In the bark of your soul reclines the commanding master. He does not sleep, wake him. Self-control is his strength. Right thought is mastery. Calmness is power. Say unto